It's the morning routine on 98.7 WNNS. Sarah Smerz hanging out with Angela Cummings, Area Director of the Illinois Chapter of American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we were wanting to have you on because this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it seems to be something that a lot of people are talking about lately. Can you speak to the importance of mental health?
Absolutely. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And now more than ever, I hate that phrase, but now more than ever, people really seem to be willing to talk about it. And so I feel like we've made great strides in the awareness part of it. Definitely a lot of pop icons, sports figures, public figures have come out and talked about their own mental health challenges. I really feel like that has elevated the conversation and made it really a more comfortable thing for people to talk about. I think the pandemic really shined a spotlight on how everybody's got mental health. We may not have felt it so severely until suddenly our world was flipped upside down. But boy, everybody kind of got a picture of what it's like to kind of live with those feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, depression. All of that really help kind of elevate the conversation. And now May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, as you said, there's just a lot of conversation around it. Tragically, this month we did lose, a singer, someone from the entertainment world, actually two people from the entertainment world, different types of entertainment. So again, it's on people's mind. We really feel like at AFSP, the conversation has been elevated to the point where we're at a tipping point. Now people kind of understand that it's out there, that we all have mental health, that there's things we can do to help each other. So now we're really kind of asking everybody to start taking some actions, some really actionable things that people can do to make sure that all of our mental health is cared for, like within all of our systems, for example. Within schools, we've got good education. We've got, mental health care for health providers and first responders. We've got this thing called 988 that's coming up. It's going to need some funding. So we might need people to talk to their legislators, and really drive home that point that this is going to be a huge tipping point, a turning point for mental health to be able to call this 988 number. And of course, research is always a big benefit to the world of suicide prevention as well. So any donations that people give to AFSP or suicide prevention networks help the research that help us to find treatments. So really kind of taking action this Mental Health Awareness Month is what we're asking people to do.
Absolutely. Now, we were just talking off the air a little bit about suicides, and I said, "Oh, well, suicides are going up." And you're like, "No, they're actually going down." So tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So the CDC comes out with their report about, well, every January, somewhere in the month of January, they come out with a report, not for the year prior, but for the year prior to the prior year. So there's a bit of a lag. There's a lot of data to work through. So in January of 2022, they came out with the 2020 numbers. And it turns out that in 2019, there was a 2% reduction in the overall suicide rate. And in 2020, there was an additional 2% reduction rate, in the overall suicide numbers. That's very, very promising news. We're not entirely sure, where that's coming from. We like that trend. We want to be sure that we keep that going. That's why all these like call to action things that we're asking people to do, call your legislators, talk to your schools, get programs in. Let's keep doing what we're doing. However it's working, let's make sure that it keeps working. But I want to point out, because I think it's worth noting, that there were some demographics where the suicide rate did not go down. And in fact, it went the other direction. It went up. Those are Black and brown communities. Even in Illinois itself, in that time period, Black people in the Black community saw almost a 30% increase in their rate.
Wow.
So instead of going 2% down, that demographic almost went 30% up. 27.7 was the final number that we got from the Illinois Department of Public Health. For Hispanic communities, almost 5%. 4.9 was the number for the increase there. So definitely that is showing us that there are some communities that are not getting the help that they need. They're not getting the messaging. It's possible that social determinants could be playing into that. Things like systemic racism, food insecurity, things that lower income populations might be experiencing can definitely play into that. So again, it's heartening that we've seen these rates go down. There's definitely a lot more work to do. And of course, one area where people are always concerned is that the youth reports of anxiety and depression were way up. Now, that hadn't translated to a big jump in suicide completion. It does translate to a jump in attempts and to reporting these really severe mental health issues. So that's another area where we want to really be sure that we're watching the kids.
Definitely. So, what should someone do if they are concerned for a loved one and their mental well being?
I always say you have to be direct. You have to, people shy away from it, but you really have to be direct. If you feel that someone is experiencing a mental health crisis to the point where they may take an action to end their life, asking them directly is not going to put the idea in their head. In fact, data shows us that asking the question directly is a relief to a person who may be contemplating suicide. So if you just say, I've noticed that you're not yourself, I've noticed that you haven't been coming out to these events, you've been late to work, whatever the behavior is you may have noticed, I would just go ahead and point that out and say, I'm really concerned about you. And I really feel like I need to ask, are you thinking of taking your life? Are you thinking of harming yourself? Again, it will be a relief to the person that you've asked more likely than not. And even if they initially get kind of mad, still you've set the tone there with that person that you're a safe person to come to. That's not a taboo subject for you. You just ask them. So they know that if it ever does get that bad, they could probably come to you. You've already established that you're a safe person. So besides asking directly, the other thing I always say, the simplest thing you can do is just stay with someone. If you can physically stay with them, suicide is an impulsive act. Usually, people who make a suicide attempt have thought about it for less than 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
quite honestly, if you can stay with someone while they're in a very elevated crisis, moment, mental health wise, if you can just kind of ride out that bad wave with them, there's a really good chance you're going to thwart a suicide attempt. And once that starts to, diminish a little bit and they're feeling a little bit better, you can sort of help guide them to help. Okay, we've made it through. I'm glad you're feeling better. It looks like you're breathing more normally. It looks like you're kind of getting back to yourself. Let's call right now the lifeline together. Let's start looking for places we could go. Do you want to go to the emergency room? Do you feel like it's that urgent? Who should we call from your family? So then you can kind of start helping them through finding resources to help them.
All right. Lots of great information today. Angela Cummings, Area Director of the Illinois Chapter of American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me and having this conversation.